I think about that day more than I want to admit. Not because I regret anything. Not really, but because it just changed things. Everything. My name's Sarah. I'm 28. Or was then, I guess. I was attached to a logistics unit, mostly shuffling papers and supplies around a dusty base in northern Iraq. It wasn't exactly what I signed up for. I wanted to be out there, doing something important. But no, they stuck me in a glorified office, pushing inventory around. It was hot, boring, and full of guys who thought they knew everything. Especially Mark. God, Mark. He was the worst. Always so by the book, so damn earnest. Like he was trying to prove something to everyone, including himself. He was the one always on my case about maps. Sarah, did you double check the route? Sarah, where's the backup map? Like I was some kind of child. We were supposed to go on the supply run. Nothing major. Just a routine delivery to a forward operating base, not far from the Syrian border. They said it was safe, but you never really knew, did you? Especially with all the chatter about increased insurgent activity in that area. I had the main map, the laminated one, shoved into my pack somewhere. But the backup, the paper one? I honestly don't know where it went. It probably fell out of my bag when I was rushing to get out of the barracks that morning. Or maybe Mark took it, just to mess with me. He was always pulling stunts like that. Little power plays? I remember standing there, sweat trickling down my back, and Mark looking at me with that smug, superior smirk. Got everything? Sarah, he asked, his eyes practically drilling into me. He knew I hated being questioned. He knew I'd rather die than admit I'd forgotten something. So, what did I do? I lied. Of course, I lied. Yeah, Mark, everything's right here. Don't you worry your pretty little head. I even gave him a little wink, just to twist the knife. He deserved it. Honestly, he was always trying to micromanage everything I did, like I wasn't capable, like I needed his approval. Sergeant Miller, our CO, was already barking orders, his face red from the sun. He wasn't the kind of guy you argued with, especially not before a run. He just wanted to get things done. No fuss, no drama. And Private Jenkins, bless his naive heart, was just excited to be going on an actual patrol. He was fresh out of basic, still buzzing with that hoorah energy. They were both relying on me, on my map, and I just let it happen. It's not like I meant for anything to go wrong. It was just a little white lie, a momentary lapse. People forget things. It happens. We piled into the Humvee, the dust kicking up around us. The heat was oppressive, even in the early morning. I was in the passenger seat, map on my lap, trying to look busy, trying to look competent. Mark was in the back with Jenkins, constantly fidgeting, constantly checking his gear. He always had to be the hero, didn't he? Always had to be the one who was more prepared, more squared away. It was exhausting. The route was supposed to be straightforward, a well-traveled dirt road that connected our base to Phoebe Falcon. We'd done it a dozen times, but then Miller got a call over the radio, some garbled message about a possible IED on the main road, a new threat. He swore under his breath, slammed the radio back into its holder. All right, change of plans, he growled. We're going off-road, taking the old bypass. My stomach dropped. The old bypass? It wasn't on the laminated map. Not in detail. Anyway, it was just a faint line, a ghost of a path. The paper map, the one I'd lost, had the finer details, the tricky turns, the potential pitfalls. My mind started racing. Could I fake it? Could I navigate us through with just the general idea of where we were going? I considered saying something, just for a second. Sergeant, I don't have the detailed map for the bypass. But then I pictured Mark's face, that triumphant smirk that I told you. So look, no, not a chance. I'd figure it out. I always did. We turned off the main road, and the dust got thicker, coating everything in a fine, gritty film. The track was barely a track, just two worn ruts in the dry earth. Trees and scrub brush pressed in on either side. It was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Miller was focused on driving, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Jenkins was craning his neck, wide-eyed, taking it all in, and Mark was just watching me. I could feel his gaze, burning a hole in the side of my head. He didn't say anything, but I knew what he was thinking. He was waiting for me to screw up. We drove for what felt like an hour, maybe more. The landscape started to blur, everything looking the same. My palms were sweaty, clutching the map. I kept trying to match the faint lines on the laminated sheet to the terrain outside the window, but nothing was adding up. We passed a cluster of ruined buildings, then a dry riverbed, and nothing seemed familiar. This wasn't right. This wasn't the bypass. Sarah? Miller said, his voice tight. Are we on the right track? My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. This was where I had to admit it. But the words just wouldn't come out. My throat felt like sandpaper. Yeah, Sergeant, I stammered, my voice sounding thin and reedy even to my own ears. Just a bit off. This part of the bypass is a little less used. Mark scoffed from the back. Less used. Sarah, this looks like we're driving into a goat trail. Are you sure you know where we're going? That was it. That was the last straw. His condescending tone, his constant need to undermine me. Of course, I know where we're going. Mark, I'm not an idiot. Maybe if you weren't so busy trying to be everyone's hero, you'd actually pay attention. It was a cheap shot. I know, but I couldn't help it. He always made me feel like I was on the defensive, like I had to prove myself constantly. Miller just sighed. All right, let's keep going. We need to make this delivery. We kept driving, deeper and deeper into unfamiliar territory. The sun was getting higher, beating down mercilessly. The air shimmered with heat. Then Miller suddenly slammed on the brakes. Hold up, he said, his voice low and serious. What's that? Up ahead, partially hidden by some sparse brush, was a small, overturned civilian vehicle, not a military one, and no signs of a struggle. My gut clenched. This was bad. This was really bad. Stay sharp, Miller ordered, grabbing his rifle. Mark, Jenkins, with me, Sarah. Stay with the vehicle. Keep eyes on the road behind us. As they got out, the silence was deafening, broken only by the distant buzz of flies. I watched them approach the overturned car, their movements cautious and slow. Mark was in front, weapon raised, like he was leading the charge. Always the showman. Jenkins, a few paces behind, looked like he was about to throw up. He was so young, then it happened. Not with a bang, but with a whisper, a sudden rustle in the brush to our right. I barely registered it before two figures, clad in dark clothing, burst out, moving with terrifying speed. They were armed. Before Miller or Mark could even react, they were on them. It was a blur of motion, shouts, and then the sickening thud of bodies hitting the ground. I froze. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. They were just gone, dragged into the brush, swift and silent, like they'd never even been there. Only Jenkins remained, standing there, staring at the spot where his comrades had vanished, his face white with terror. He was whimpering. Jenkins, get in, I screamed, my voice cracking. Get in the vehicle. He stumbled, falling, then scrambled to his feet and practically threw himself into the back of the Humvee. I shoved the gear into reverse, stomped on the gas, dust flying as we spun around. My mind was a whirlwind. What did I just see? What happened? We drove like maniacs, back the way we came, back toward where I thought the main road was. Jenkins was sobbing in the back, incoherent. I tried to focus, tried to remember anything, any landmark, anything that could get us back. But it was all just an endless, featureless expanse of dirt and scrub. What do we do? Sarah? Jenkins wailed, his voice raw. They took Sergeant Miller and Mark. Shut up. Jenkins, just shut up. I snapped, my own voice shaking. We're going to get help. We're going to get them back. But even as I said it, I knew it was my fault. It was my damn fault. If I hadn't lied, if I just admitted I forgot the map, we wouldn't have been on that stupid bypass. We wouldn't have driven straight into whatever that was. Mark, for all his annoying habits, didn't deserve this. Miller, who was just trying to do his job, didn't deserve this. We finally stumbled onto a recognizable road hours later, almost out of gas, the sun sinking low in the sky. I drove straight back to base, the whole story spilling out of me in a rush to the commanding officer. I left out the part about the map. Of course, I said we hit a wrong turn, that the terrain was confusing, that we were ambushed. Jenkins, bless his broken spirit, was too traumatized to contradict me. He just sat there, staring blankly, reliving whatever nightmare he'd witnessed. The CO launched an immediate search and rescue operation, but it was too late. Days later, intelligence came back. Miller and Mark had been captured, taken across the border into Syria. The group that took them was known for ransoms, for other things. The news spread like wildfire through the base. Everyone was talking about it. How could two soldiers just vanish? I walked around with a knot in my stomach, pretending to be as devastated as everyone else. I cried on cue when people offered condolences. I nodded solemnly when they talked about how tragic it was. But inside, there was this cold, hard core of something else. Not exactly guilt, more like resentment. Resentment that I was the one who had to deal with this, with the fallout of their stupidity for not checking my map. Why didn't Mark just ask to see the damn thing again before we left? He was so obsessed with protocol. Why didn't he follow his own? It wasn't entirely on me. Jenkins was a mess. They sent him to some mental health facility. Said he was in shock. He kept having nightmares. I visited him once. He just stared at me, his eyes hollow. He didn't say anything about the map. Didn't say anything about my lie. He just kept repeating, they were there, and then they weren't. I felt a flicker of something then, a tiny spark of unease, but I quickly snuffed it out. He was just a kid. Traumatized? He wouldn't remember the details. The investigation started, internal inquiries, official reports. I stuck to my story. Wrong turn. Ambush. Bad luck. I made sure to emphasize how disorienting the terrain was, how sudden the attack. I even shed a few tears when I talked about how brave Miller and Mark were, how they tried to fight back. It was convincing. People bought it. They felt sorry for me, the brave female soldier who survived a harrowing ordeal. My parents called worried sick. I told them the same story, leaving out all the messy parts. They told me how proud they were, how strong I was. It felt good. That validation, it almost made me forget the cold dread that sometimes gnawed at me in the dead of night. But things weren't the same. The atmosphere on base changed. People were more cautious, more suspicious. And I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Not by the officers, but by the other soldiers, especially the ones who had been close to Mark and Miller. They looked at me differently, not with sympathy, but with something colder, a question in their eyes. There was Sergeant Eva Rodriguez, a hard-nosed medic who had known Miller for years. She just looked at me with this intense, unblinking stare whenever I saw her. Didn't say anything. Just looked. It was unnerving. And Specialist David Lee, Mark's best friend. He stopped talking to me entirely. Just walked away if I entered a room. It stung. But I just told myself they were grieving, acting out. People deal with loss in strange ways. It wasn't my fault they couldn't handle it. I started having trouble sleeping. Not from guilt, really, but from the sheer exhaustion of keeping up the facade. Every conversation felt like an interrogation. Every polite question felt like an accusation. I found myself snapping at people, lashing out over small things. The base doctor put me on something for anxiety. Said I was suffering from situational stress. Yeah, right? Situational stress from being blamed for something that wasn't my fault. A few months passed. The official report came out. It concluded that the patrol had deviated from the approved route due to a navigational error and then encountered an unexpected hostile force. It basically said it was an unfortunate accident. No blame was assigned. I breathed a sigh of relief. I was in the clear, but then things started to unravel, slowly at first. Jenkins, the traumatized private, was discharged, medically. But before he left, I heard he started talking more. Not to me, but to the therapist, to the other soldiers in the mental health wing. Little fragments of memory. She said she had the map, but then we were lost. She snapped at Mark. When he asked about the route, just whispers. But whispers spread like wildfire on a military base. I heard it from Lieutenant Davies, a junior officer who used to try to flirt with me. Now just seemed to avoid eye contact. Hey, Sarah, he said, shifting his weight awkwardly. Heard some talk about what happened on that patrol. What talk? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. I told them everything. The official report is out. He just shrugged, looking uncomfortable. Yeah. Well, people talk. Jenkins. He's been saying some things. My blood ran cold. That little idiot. After all I'd done, staying with him, getting him back to base. He was just trying to shift blame, to make himself feel better. It was typical. People always try to find a scapegoat when things go wrong. And I was an easy target. A woman in a man's world. I confronted Jenkins. I went to the facility, talked my way in. He was sitting in the common room, staring at the TV. He looked even worse than before. Gaunt, distant. Jenkins, I said, my voice low and urgent. What are you telling people? He turned to me, his eyes wide and unfocused. The map, he whispered. You said you had it, but you didn't. We got lost because of you. My stomach lurched. Don't be ridiculous. Jenkins? I had the map. We just got ambushed. It was an unforeseen circumstance. Are you trying to blame me for what happened to Mark and Miller? After everything we went through, I tried to make my voice sound hurt. Betrayed? I even teared up a little. Weaponized vulnerability. That's what it was. It usually worked, but he just shook his head, a single tear tracing a path down his hollow cheek. They were good men. Sarah. And you lied? He didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He just said it. Flat and broken. And for a second, just a second, I almost felt something. A tremor of, what? Regret. fear, but then anger surged, hot and righteous. He was trying to ruin my life. Just because he couldn't handle his own trauma? It was pathetic. I left, seething. How dare he? How dare he try to pin this on me? I had to do something. I started spreading rumors about Jenkins. How he was unstable. How he was making things up because of his PTSD. How he was clearly just trying to get attention. It worked, to some extent. People felt sorry for him, but they also started to question his credibility. Poor Jenkins. He's just not right in the head. But the whispers didn't stop. They mutated. Now it wasn't just Jenkins. It was about my attitude. My lack of attention to detail. Suddenly, every small mistake I'd ever made, every little shortcut I'd taken, was being rehashed and dissected. I felt like I was living under a microscope. My work suffered. I was distracted. Constantly on edge. I started making actual mistakes. Genuine errors. Because I was so worried about being caught. My superiors noticed. They started assigning me to more menial tasks. Less responsibility. It felt like a demotion. A subtle punishment. But they couldn't prove anything about the map. So they just froze me out. Then came the letter. Not from the military. But from Mark's family. His parents. It was cold. Formal. They were suing the military. Claiming negligence. Claiming their son was put in harm's way due to incompetence. And they wanted statements from everyone involved. Including me. I panicked. This wasn't just whispers now. This was real. Legal trouble. I knew what they were doing. They were fishing, trying to find someone to blame, someone to pay, and they were going to come after me. I hired a lawyer, a civilian one, recommended by a friend of my father's. He was expensive, but he promised to protect me. Stick to your story. He advised, the military's report cleared you. Anything else is just hearsay. So I stuck to it. Through depositions, through interviews. I cried on cue when I talked about how much I missed Mark. I even sent a heartfelt, fabricated letter of condolence to his parents, talking about his bravery and how I wished things had been different. It felt performative, but I had to do it. The trial was a circus. Mark's parents, devastated and angry, portrayed him as a saint, a dedicated soldier, a loving son. They barely mentioned Miller, focusing all their grief and rage on Mark. And then there was me, the survivor. They tried to paint me as incompetent, as reckless, but I had my lawyer, and I had the official report. The biggest blow came from an unexpected source, Sergeant Eva Rodriguez. She testified, not about the map directly, but about my character, how I was always cutting corners, how I was arrogant, how I often dismissed concerns from others. She presented herself as a concerned professional, just stating facts. It was a subtle, passive-aggressive dig, masked as honesty. It made me look bad, made me look unreliable, but it wasn't a direct accusation about the map. It just painted a picture of me that wasn't flattering. And then a new development. Some intelligence analysts, reviewing all the data related to the incident, found something, a comms intercept, a brief, garbled message from the insurgents, picked up hours after our patrol went missing. It mentioned 2 high-value targets taken from an unconventional route. The word unconventional hung in the air like a death knell. It pointed directly to my navigational error. The court didn't explicitly state I was responsible. They couldn't. The official report still stood, but the implication was there. The judge ruled in favor of Mark's parents, awarding them a significant settlement, not from me directly, but from the military. It was a win for them, a devastating loss for the institution, and everyone knew, even if they didn't say it out loud, that my navigational error was the linchpin. I was transferred, quietly, sent to a remote base in the middle of nowhere, pushing papers for a different unit. My career, once full of promise, was dead. My friends, the few I had, drifted away. No one wanted to be associated with that girl, the one who had gotten 2 soldiers captured. I still work for the military, technically, but I'm stuck. No promotions, no opportunities. I'm just here, in a tiny apartment off base, pushing papers, watching the days bleed into weeks, months, years. The only contact I have with the outside world is my parents, who still believe my version of events, who still tell me I'm strong and resilient. It's the only thing that keeps me sane. I see stories on the news sometimes about the groups operating near the Syrian border. Sometimes a name will flash across the screen, a vague reference to a long-term hostage situation. I wonder if it's them, Miller and Mark. I try not to think about it too much. What's done is done. They ruined my life. You know, Mark, with his constant need to be right. Miller, for not double-checking my work. Jenkins, for blabbing. Eva, for her petty revenge. Everyone just trying to blame me for something that was clearly an accident. An unforeseen tragedy. I'm the one who had to live with the consequences. I'm the one who's stuck here. My career in tatters? And for what? For one small mistake. One little lie. It's not fair. I was just trying to do my job, trying to survive in a place that didn't want me. And now I'm paying for everyone else's failures. I'm the victim here, not them. Not really.